In this episode of Restore It, it's time to fit out the new workshop. This mini-series is going to be slightly different from my previous workshop builds because this time round I've got some industrial grade equipment that the channel has needed for a very long time. And also because I've finally found a workshop that is the perfect size for my needs, high enough for a car lift but not too much space that I lose everything all of the time. Some of you will have already seen the unpacking episode I posted right after I moved in, and in that episode the workshop ended up looking like this. A bit of a mess with a few workbenches in place and a lot of stuff that shouldn't really be in here. Since then, I have completely transformed this unit into the best workshop I've ever had, which is going to allow me to make way more content than before, and I'm super excited to show you the finished product. Before we get into what's happened since then, and what I'm going to be doing in this episode, I just want to quickly thank Babbel for sponsoring this episode. Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world, with over 10 million subscriptions worldwide. As a British person who recently lived in Spain for 2 years, I stumbled upon Babbel whilst looking for an affordable way to learn Spanish that didn't involve leaving my house and could be done in a time frame that suited me. I use Babbel for 15 minutes a day whilst taking breaks at the workshop to keep my Spanish skills growing, as my parents now live in Spain and I visit them as much as possible. The reason I chose Babbel is because it teaches you not only to speak the language you want to learn, but also to read it and write it, something I really struggled with before I started using it. It prepares you for real life situations whilst it teaches you, and because of this, it's scientifically proven to get you speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. You only need 10 to 15 minutes a day to see results, and it's a really constructive and surprisingly fun way to pass a small amount of time that you would have otherwise spent scrolling through Instagram or getting sucked into the depths of YouTube Shorts, which definitely isn't fun. So Babbel is a really great way to mix up your usual routine and do something really rewarding. I've gone from habla inglés to more hola, estoy aprendiendo a hablar español, which really is a great feeling. You can also learn on the go from anywhere in the world because you don't need a Wi-Fi connection and lessons can be downloaded. Because I've partnered up with Babbel, Restore It viewers will get a huge 60% off your subscriptions. Just click the link at the top of the video description to claim your discount now. Big thanks to Babbel for supporting the channel and helping me improve my Spanish. Let's get started on the workshop. So, the reason I didn't fully organise everything straight away is because I knew it was time to upgrade the most important tools. For 5 years now I've been using hobby grade equipment, which to be fair was exactly what I needed to get me started. But now that I've got a bit more experience and I just want to get on with making as much content as possible, as efficiently as possible, it's time for an upgrade, and oh boy am I excited. Since the first episode on this workshop, I've made a few changes which mainly consist of pushing as many things as possible to the back and sides of the workshop and pretending none of it's there. Moving from a workshop that was way too big for me into a much smaller one, after collecting a load of stuff, I had to get rid of a fair amount of it as it was just impossible to fit it all in. And also, not really practical doing that many things at once. But that really was a bit of a distraction, so it was probably for the best. The majority of the stuff left in here is from the 325i Sport and a few other E30s, as well as the usual workshop stuff that any good workshop needs. To begin with, I'm going to start removing as many things from the main workshop area as possible to make way for the new equipment and also the new electrics for the equipment. I'm also going to address the lack of light in this episode so we can actually see what's going on for once in a Restore It episode. In every workshop I've worked in, it's always been an issue, but this time round I've actually solved the problem once and for all. There is a good amount of wall space for shelving and general wall storage, and I will be making use of it, but I want to keep it to a minimum so I have more space for cool things like banners, old projects and all that good stuff to make it as much of a nice environment to work in as possible. One of the main reasons for the hobby grade equipment, other than its cheap price, is the fact that it runs off the standard 240 volt system, which is available in any house or industrial building in the country. So in this episode, the workshop is getting an upgrade from 240 volts single phase to 415 volts 3 phase so it can accommodate all of the new equipment. So first things first, I'm going to remove anything I don't use on a daily basis from the main workshop area and move it into the front storage room for now. Basically I need to finish moving in, but I'll get through this quite quickly. Although I will be removing most of them, I don't want to remove all of the shelving, because when they're properly organised they're a great use of space. Throwing anything at them in a rush like this definitely isn't making good use of them. With that mess sorted, I now need to do the back of the workshop as this is going to be the main working area where all of the new equipment is going to go, and therefore where the first of the new 3-phase sockets will be installed. Most of these parts are from the 325i Sport. Moving all of this reminds me of just how much work is left on this car, but hopefully with the new workshop and tools, the speed at which I can get the work done and make the content will increase massively. That's enough space along the back wall for now. I just need to clear these two shelves and the stuff next to the car lift, as that's also going to be moved during this episode. My camera died, but I managed to clear everything out of the way where the new wiring is going to go, ready for the electrician. Just as I was finishing up, the first and possibly most important piece of new equipment arrived. So this is the new compressor. It's a Chicago Pneumatic CPM 15 10-270 screw compressor. It's an 11 kilowatt, 15 horsepower, 10 bar 52 CFM or 8 bar 60 CFM, 270 litre full feature screw compressor supplied by Northern Compressed Air, a company that specialises in compressors and compressed air systems. I will tell you more about those guys in a moment, but first, let's take a look at the machine they recommended for Restore It. This is my new favourite thing ever. I mean, just look at it. It's a piece of mechanical artwork. But it doesn't just look good. The CPM 15 specs literally blow the old compressor away. This machine is what's known as a full feature screw compressor. It has a built-in digital controller with 2 pressure settings and fault indicators. It's got a built-in fridge dryer to take the air dew point to +3 degrees Celsius, removing all moisture. It's also got a 2-stage filtration system taking dirt and particle carryover content to 0.01 ppm, which is perfect for body shop air quality, and a huge 270 litre air receiver with an automatic drain system all in one. It's designed to be run 24/7 if needs be, and it does all of this whilst being 30% more efficient than a piston type compressor. And finally, it's 40 decibels quieter than the old machine. I mean, this really is the machine for the job. There are 3 plugs coming out of it, one 3-phase for the compression, one single phase for the air dryer, and another one for the auto draining system. Before we go any further, let's just cherish this moment. I will come back to this towards the end of the episode once some progress has been made, but just look at how fast this thing is pumping up. That's halfway full on a 270 litre tank in about 30 seconds. The old piston compressor was 200 litres and took around 8 minutes 30 to reach its max pressure of 10 bar 13 CFM. So not only is there going to be endless air, that air is going to be completely clean and dry as it comes out of the compressor, which will make my air tools last longer, my blasting cabinet and media stay moisture free, which is also super important for the spray guns and 2K paint. With one click of a button, you can see the gauge drop to 0 in a matter of seconds, meaning no moisture at all. And the real cherry on top with this compressor is the fact that I'm never going to have to get on my knees or bend down to open a valve on the bottom of the tank to drain out the condensation, which is something that needs to be done at least once a day to prevent rust. And this compressor will do it for me however many times a day I choose for an adjustable amount of time. This compressor really is a dream machine. It's a bit more powerful than what I originally planned to get, but thankfully Northern Compressed Air stepped in and spent their time going through the needs of the channel with me and came to the conclusion that a 50 to 60 CFM full feature screw compressor was the best option for now and into the future. The guys at Northern Compressed Air have been great. They're really approachable, friendly and happy to get behind a project and apply their knowledge. Northern Compressed Air are the sole distributors for Chicago Pneumatic compressors in the UK, so if you're looking to get a CPM 15 like this, or any compressor for that matter, new or used, bigger or smaller, make sure you click the link in the video description to get in contact with these guys, as they are super knowledgeable when it comes to compressors and complete energy efficient air solutions at low costs. Because compressors aren't all they know about, they also specialise in compressed air systems, be it for a bakery, a factory, a workshop, or quite literally any purpose, big or small. They can design, install and set up full compressed air systems to meet any need. No job is too big or too small. So if you're looking for a compressed air solution for your single workshop, or an entire system for a state-of-the-art body shop, Northern Compressed Air are the guys to go to. They'll also be managing the service of this machine, which will happen once a year to keep it running as it should. And if any fault codes come up on the screen, I will immediately be passing it on to them for advice, because I won't lie, this one is a bit more complicated than the old piston one. The plan for the future is to have a full air system installed, which is exactly what Northern Compressed Air are good at. So you might be seeing these guys again on the channel in the future, once everything's been installed and I'm up and running and I know exactly where all the outlets need to be and where all of the large pieces of equipment that require air are going to be, so it can all be hardwired in, which will make everything work at the touch of a single button. I just want to give a huge thank you to Northern Compressed Air for helping restore it out with a new compressor, and hopefully we'll be seeing them in the future for some pipe work to really take full advantage of it. Make sure you check them out in the meantime, as they really are second to none for compressed air solutions. We'll come back to the compressor towards the end of this episode to see what it can really do. For now though, I need to get some more light into this workshop so we can all see what's going on when I do end up testing it. Some of you will remember that I mentioned a roofing company was due to come and change the skylights out for new ones. Well, I don't know if you can tell, but they've already been, but they only did the outer ones, leaving me in the dark. Thankfully, I didn't pay them, as they were contracted by the owner of the building, but I'd say it's about 10% lighter in here since they did the swap. I can see more light coming through, but it's still mostly getting blocked. So what I'm going to do is remove the old inner panels, which should leave only the brand new ones, which will let all of the light in. To make sure this is even possible, I'm going to remove this panel, which is the easiest one to get to. Thankfully, they're so old and brittle I can just poke it with a stick until it's no longer attached at one end, and then drag them down with another stick with a hook on it. Unfortunately, there's another panel on top of this one which is also really dirty, but I'm almost certain there is another newer panel on top of that one. I'm going to get this side done as I can clearly see good panels above all of these indoor ones. This is a very messy job, but I think it's going to be totally worth it once it's done. It's hard to see on camera here, but that is beautiful blue sky coming straight through. I've never been so excited for natural light. I cannot wait to get the rest down. This is taking way longer than I'd like it to, but I'm not stopping until it's all down. Well, that's one side done. It's night time now, so we can't really see the results, but I think it's going to be drastically different in here with the sun shining through. It's now the next day and I'm going to do the other side, but first I need to move the touring out of the way and off of the ramp, as that's the next thing I'm going to be moving. Please just ignore the large thing under the blanket for now. We'll get to that in episode 2, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss it if you aren't already, because that's also a very exciting piece of equipment. With the car out of the way, I can now start poking at this side to see if there are any new panels above the second layer that I've already come across. Well, at least half of this is new, so that's good. For some reason, this half is double, now triple layered, which has prevented so much more light getting through compared to the rest. These ones are so awkward to remove, I'm having to get on the lift to get closer and do it by hand. It is a bit sketchy, but I'm being as careful as possible. Thankfully, the roofers did change all of them out for new ones, which means for the first time ever I can actually see what I'm doing, and so can you. It's a good job I've got this done early because it's made quite a mess, but with both of them done, just look at how bright it is in here now in comparison. This is an overcast day with no workshop lights on, so I'm definitely going to have to get used to new settings on the camera for different times of the day. Now just to clean up all of this mess before the electrician gets here. Oh, and not to forget, I still need to install a new lighting setup for when it does get dark, but that can be done at a later date once everything is set up and I know where I need the lights to be. And don't worry, before one of you types it in the comments, I will be replacing the old inner panels I just removed with new clear ones before the winter comes, as I'm sure one layer will struggle to keep any heat in whatsoever, and I hate the cold as much as anyone else. I didn't get a chance to film it, but the electrician came and installed a new 3-phase meter and fuse box, and 2 3-phase sockets. To keep costs down, I've gone for a 4-way fuse box, which will allow me to have 4 3-phase sockets in total, but I'm also only starting with 2 sockets, as I won't be running the 3 machines all at once, at least to begin with. So now that the electrics are done and the skylights are doing their job, it's time to uninstall the lift from the back of the workshop so it can be reinstalled at the front of the workshop in a later episode. As I won't be working on cars full time, I think it'll be best to keep all of the car related stuff towards the front, so I don't have to keep a clear path all the way to the back so they can get in and out. Another reason I can easily move it is because this lift is single phase, meaning it can be plugged in anywhere in the workshop. Unlike the 3-phase machines, which need to be as close to the fuse box as possible, 1 to keep the cable costs down, and 2 because those cables shouldn't be too long to prevent voltage loss. Before I can unbolt it from the floor and tip it over, I first need to remove the arms and drain the fluid out. I'm going to bring them down to the ground and then unbolt them one by one. With those gone, I can now remove the middle plate that covers the hydraulic hose and cables. With that out of the way, I can now deal with each side separately, being careful to keep the cables and hose slack the whole time. I'm removing as much as possible to make each side as light as possible before they get tipped over. Doing this also gives me the opportunity and excuse to clean and maybe even repaint a few of these pieces. I really want to do a full restoration on it, but I think for now a minor one will have to do. So to prevent a major leak, I'm going to drain all of the hydraulic fluid out first, and whilst it's out, we can have a good look at it to see if it could do with replacing. To help the fluid exit the system, I'm going to lift the arm carriers up all the way and let gravity do the work. With those up, I can now undo the return hose and let it drain out. Well, this does seem to be working. This fluid has definitely seen better days, so I'm definitely going to replace it. With all of that out, I can now reinstall the drain plug on the reservoir and get this thing unbolted from the floor. I still cannot get over how bright it is in here. It's like a different building completely. To get these posts down, I'm going to do one at a time by taking them halfway down by hand and then the rest of the way with the engine crane. Before I can do that, I first need to remove this shelf and all of its goods out of the way. With that done, I can now loosen the nuts on the bottom plate with a breaker bar, as thankfully they are quite tight. This lift is currently being held in with the threaded bar and epoxy sealant method. One thing's for sure, I'm not going to be able to get those threaded bars out, so I'll have to grind them flush and cover them with concrete. I now need to cut the bars flush with the bottom plate so it doesn't get caught on them as it tips over. I think what I'm going to do when I reinstall the lift is go for anchor bolts and epoxy sealant, as that seems to be the best of both worlds. The same can now be done to the other side. With those done, I've borrowed Patrick from next door and we're going to begin the tipping procedure. So the idea is to get it down onto the table and then let the engine crane handle the rest of the way, saving us from breaking our backs, or arms, or the lift for that matter if we drop it. Once the table was out of the equation, I could loosen the crane and bring it down nice and slowly, making sure the cables and hose are slack at all times. They've looked tight a few times during this, but I can assure you they were slack the entire time. With this side on the floor and ready to go, we can now move on to the left hand side. Because the workbench was a bit far away, we've chosen to use the table first. We're now going to use a toolbox on the workbench to prevent it going down too far all at once. With it being supported by the crane, most of the hard work is done. I now just need to manoeuvre the crane out of the way and bring it down. And there we go, both sides down without any issues or injuries. With them both on the ground, I can now jack up the bottom plate and put a dolly underneath so they can move freely. I can now push this to the front of the workshop where it will sit until the next episode, because I need to arrange some more help to get it back up, once the area is clear. That whole job, although a bit time consuming, was actually very easy with just 2 people. I'm not sure what I would have done without the wheel dollies or engine lift, so if you're doing a move like this, it might be worth borrowing or buying those tools. This hydraulic fluid doesn't look too bad, but as it's already out and I'll be bleeding the system, I might as well get some fresh stuff. With all of this new space, I thought I should test fit the compressor to make sure all 3 sockets are close enough and that everything works as it should. It's still a bit of a cramped mess in here, but I can slowly see it coming together already. The compressor fits and functions where it is with no issues. I now just need to get some help to get it off the pallet so it can be bolted into the concrete with vibration pads in between it and the ground. I think this thing weighs around 260 kilograms, so it's not an easy lift to do on my own, or even for two people. Now that I've got more space to play with, I want to start painting the floor in sections, as that's the only way I can see it happening with all of this stuff already in here. Before I do that, I'm going to need the space in this corner so I can move everything out of the way on this side. So I'm going to remove all of this badly organised stuff out of the workshop area and into the storage room. This took me way longer than I'm making it look here. Not only because the footage is sped up, but because I spent so much time shuffling around the stuff in the storage room to get it to fit. Let's just say it's a bit tight in there. But with all of that stuff out of the way, I can now fill this area with more stuff to get this half painted. This is the floor paint I bought for the old workshop about 2.5 years ago, but didn't end up using. I thought it was a goner, as it was completely brown when I opened it, but thankfully with a bit of mixing it's turning back to light grey. Now I just need to clear the area and clean the floor. I'm using a strong detergent to thoroughly clean the floor and then rags to dry it. This is also taking way longer than I expected it to, so I'm going to leave this overnight to ensure it's fully dry before I start painting. A new day and a dry floor, so now I can start getting paint down. With the edges done, I'm going to use a roller to do the rest. I'm pretty sure I can feel the workshop getting lighter the more paint I put down. It almost looks white in this shot, but I think it's just the camera settings being wrong. You can kind of see it better in this light. So now I'm going to let this dry fully so I can pile everything into this corner whilst I do the other one, and then the same will go for the front of the workshop. I think once it's all done, it will reflect the new light coming in from the skylights much better and make the whole place feel even brighter. I'm also going to repaint the white sections of the walls as they're quite dirty and it really stands out now that the floor is so fresh. It actually feels like a different unit in here with the old skylights out of the way, and I think once all the floor is done and the walls are repainted, it will be a much nicer place to work and film in. There's still a lot of stuff that needs sorting out and removing, but I'm pretty pleased with the progress so far. This time round I really feel like I'm doing it properly. The first new machine is in, but we still have at least 3 major pieces of equipment to go. This roller shutter garage door is about 35 years old, and is in a very bad state, so that's also going to be replaced with a new one in a coming episode. The lift will be installed into its new location and bolted into the ground, something I'm going to tackle myself this time. Once everything is cleared out of the main area, I can start getting things into their final places, like these parts bins, and continue painting the floor in sections. And once that's done, I can then bring only the things I'm going to use on a regular basis back into the main area. I cannot wait until it's completely finished and I can film an E30 or an antique episode using all of the new equipment in a super light and clean environment for the first time ever. I'm sure most of you can guess what the next piece of equipment is going to be, as there's a certain something missing from this shot, and not forgetting the great big thing under the blanket, which may have also given it away. But that's for the next episode, and why it's a good job the compressor came first. Speaking of which, now that the floor is fully dry, we can get it back into its place, but on its pallet for now. After speaking with a few people in the know, I'm definitely going to need a forklift or at least 4 people to get this off safely, as it falling over would be the end of the world quite literally. I'm definitely going to have to invest in a mop and bucket to keep this floor as clean as it is now, but thankfully it does clean really easily. Staying on the topic of cleanliness, I've had this flexible air hose for as long as I've had the channel, and I've never fully cleaned it. Well, I think now is a good time because right now this hose is simply not worthy of the new compressor. I'm using thinners to strip off what is mostly 5 years worth of overspray. It's coming off so easily. I really do wish I had done this sooner. And there we go, looking as brand new as the CPM 15. I just want to show you how capable this compressor is because it's slightly blowing my mind. It's literally like I've entered a cheat code into real life. So like I said before, This is a Chicago Pneumatic CPM 15 10 270 screw compressor. It's an efficient 11 kilowatt, low noise, fridge dryer, auto draining beauty of a compressor. So first of all, the time it takes for this thing to pump up to full is crazy. It's about 1 minute in total. It has a maximum output flow of 10 bar 52 CFM or 8 bar 60 CFM compared to the old compressor, which would take 8 minutes 30 seconds to fill a 200 litre tank at a maximum output flow of 13 CFM. Even more impressive is that the new tank is 70 litres bigger than the old one. Second is the noise. Because it's a screw compressor, it runs at only 69 decibels, which is about 30 decibels lower than the old piston one. This makes it impossible to hear with my noise cancelling headphones on, as it's a different type of noise. Third is the CFM of this thing, the sheer output of air. As I've mentioned, the old compressor was 13 CFM, which is great for small jobs and pumping up tyres, but this CPM 15 has a digital controller with 2 pressure settings, which is over 4.5 times more powerful than the old one. The amount of air it can push out on a continuous basis is just mental. Just to show you how little effect this unregulated air gun has on it, let's just watch the pressure gauge. I'm currently running the compressor without a regulator, so it's just like opening the tap fully, pushing 150 psi out of this air gun, way above the 90 psi it's rated for, but this is just for the sake of this demonstration. So as soon as the pressure reaches a certain point, which can be adjusted, it will automatically turn on and start filling back up again. The difference with this compressor is that it can easily overcome this air gun on 150 psi. It just pushes through like it's not even there, back up to 10 bar where it will stay forever. I'm pretty sure it would take 4 or 5 people using air tools on max at the same time for some time before it starts actually using what's in the tank whilst it's running. It's just that powerful. It's also very efficient at the same time. It's actually 30% more efficient than a piston style compressor, and it has been designed to run 24/7 for a year if needs be. This may seem a bit overkill, but this screw compressor is going to make it possible for me to massively increase the amount of content I produce, by single-handedly speeding up every single process I use. For years now, I've been trying to keep as consistent as possible with the content, but the equipment has been holding me back at an increasing rate the more I push them past what they were designed for. When it comes to shop blasting, it's a combination of not having enough power to blast rust and paint off quickly enough, and not having enough duty cycle on the compressor to blast for long enough to finish the job in a sensible time. To get the channel to where I want it to be, one of the fundamental things I need is a compressor that will provide me with a consistent level of high CFM and moisture-free compressed air, and this CPM 15 from Northern Compressed Air is absolutely perfect for the job, and it's completely future-proof. The main reason I need all of that power is because shop blasting is a seriously demanding task in terms of CFM, so the more you have, the better you can shop blast. The old compressor had a 30-minute duty cycle, which meant it wasn't designed to be run for prolonged periods of time, something shop blasting obviously requires, and it would overload protect itself once it reached that cutoff point, at which point I would have to wait at least half an hour to start blasting again, only to encounter the same issue again. The CPM 15 has a 100% duty cycle, meaning it can be used, and by used I mean on and running, continuously for a year before stopping only for a service. It's an absolute beast of a machine. So one of these compressors wouldn't be out of place in a factory that runs 24/7 producing food, or a large body shop that has a lot of employees working with air tools at the same time. For me, it's a compressor for life. With regular yearly services and new parts when needed, these things will last forever. I definitely do need to install a regulator on it because it will outdo the RPMs for the tools and for the bits, as you can see here. But for the first time ever, I can run these air tools at full power the whole time. I can get so much more work done in the same amount of time. It's actually crazy to think I've gone this long without a compressor like this, whilst I'm trying to produce at least 1 episode per week. The way this finger sander eats through these tack welds is mind-boggling. It actually feels about 4 times faster than before. Even an 80 grit pad on a palm sander is ridiculously effective. I cannot wait to see what 36 grit pads are like. I almost don't need to improve my welding anymore because this compressor is so OP. But don't worry, I certainly will be, as I've been wanting to upgrade the welder for years now, so stay tuned for that episode as well. The good thing about a compressor like this is that I can now slowly but surely upgrade all of my tools to air tools, like an air grinder, which will be way faster than any electric version and much easier to maintain. The dream now is of course to get the full CP range of air tools to match the compressor. As you can tell, I'm pretty pumped about this new compressor and I cannot wait to start using it. So that pretty much concludes the first episode of 4 that I'm going to put out on this workshop build. Once again, a huge thank you to Northern Compressed Air for the help. Make sure to check them out at the link below. And also, don't forget to check out Babbel at the top of the video description if you're looking to learn a new language. Thank you so much for watching, I can't wait to bring you the next episode, and I hope to see you then. Bye for now.